Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. While trade talk and tariffs moved the commodity markets early in the week, a slower moving change has been making its way through the ag industry over the past couple of years with the widespread use of GLP-1 weight loss medication. The team behind the Meat Demand Monitor recently investigated GLP-1s, and Justin Bina, one of the researchers, joins us today to break down the results. Dr. Bina, thank you so much for talking with us.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
So we've seen these GLP-1s, the Wegovy's, the weight loss medication, become more widespread in the past couple of years. How is it impacting protein use?
Yeah, good question. So my colleague, Dr. Glenn Tonser at Kansas State, and I have been interested in this specific topic for a while now. So Glenn heads the Meat Demand Monitor project, and that's a large national survey data collection effort that's funded by the U.S. Beef and Pork Checkoff programs. Well, in that survey, the second half of 2024, so July through December, we specifically included some GLP-1 related questions, asking these survey participants whether they're using these medications, why not. And over the course of July through December of 2024, we collected around 16,000 survey participants, and of those 16,000, roughly 2,400 indicated that they were currently using a GLP-1 medication. So that's a little under 15%.
Okay.
Now, and to your question, we wanted to see how these GLP-1 users differed in how they were consuming protein. So in this Meat Demand Monitor project, we actually tracked the number of prior day meals that include beef, pork, chicken, seafood, alternative proteins. And what we were seeing the second half of 2024 is that these GLP-1 users are including all of those different protein sources in a larger number of meals every day than non-users.
Okay, so if I understand that correctly, what the data is showing is that regular non-GLP-1 users are eating a mix of proteins and non-protein sources, but GLP-1 users really seem to have zeroed in on protein servings. Is that right?
Yes, they really have. And that's broadly consistent with what we're seeing from industry response thus far to this developing GLP-1 situation. We're seeing companies like Nestle really starting to offer these products that are high in nutrient content and specifically high in protein content.
And with the research that you did, are you under the impression that the takers, the users of these medications will continue this type of dieting on into the future?
So that's uncertain. So GLP-1 medications are really interesting because it's a weight loss strategy it's harder to cheat the diet, but it's also tied into accessibility of these medications, cost of these medications. So it's really going to depend, these long-term impacts are really going to depend on users' continued access to the drugs.
That makes a lot of sense. So if they can continue accessing it, then we should see these continued approaches to protein. It is going to be an interesting thing to continue watching. Dr. Bina, tell folks, where can they go read your full survey?
Yeah, so all of the Meat Demand Monitor survey data, all of our special reports like the one we just discussed, that's going to be available on agmanager.info. So Kansas State University's extension website, agmanager.info.
Absolutely. Check that out. Give it a read. It's going to impact the meat industry for some time to come. Dr. Bina, thank you so much for joining us this week.
All right. Thank you for having me.
This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone. Well, it's time to jump into the markets, and we saw international trade really have an impact on the markets early in the week. Joining me now for an update is Dr. Chad Hart, professor of ag economics at Iowa State University. And Dr. Hart, thanks for joining us this week.
It's my pleasure to be with you.
So to kick the week off, we saw the tariff man, President Donald Trump, make his reappearance in Washington, D.C. Tariffs were on, then they were off. Chad, where does the grain market go from here?
Well, that's it. What we saw the grain market sort of do in the initial wave here is that, there was downward pressure on pricing as the tariffs were sort of announced, but it was a waiting game to see what would happen here. How would the other countries respond? And when we saw the negotiations happen, we saw the markets bounce back a bit here, as I think there is this sense that, as especially the crop markets are looking at this, right now the tariffs are more of a negotiation tactic than they are set policy that has to go in place right now. And that has actually allowed the markets to buoy back up again because international demand has been growing over the past year.
That is good news, because when we think back to this time of year last year, 2024's marketing season, we were seeing export sales down for both corn and soybeans. Chad, but now they're coming back, it sounds like.
Yeah, we are up. When you look at export sales so far this year, soybeans are up 10%. Corn's the real strong point here. We're up about 28, 29%. And what you've been seeing is that while we're still losing some sales in China, we've been gaining those sales in other markets. And especially in the case of corn, we have not only sort of filled that Chinese gap, but we've exceeded that, and that's allowed for significant growth when it comes to total demand for corn.
Now, we did see those tariffs come off Canada and Mexico at the start of the week, but the tariffs on China, Dr. Hart, did remain. As you look forward for soybeans in particular, does this create some longer-term concerns?
It does, and like I say, I call it the China gap between corn and soybeans. You have seen those crop prices sort of separate amongst those two crops, and arguably it's because of how large China is within the soybean market relative to the corn market. As you mentioned, the idea is the Chinese tariffs have gone on at least at the beginning of the week, and so we are seeing some downward pressure in that market that's not necessarily hitting the other crop markets.
All right, and all of those factors, of course, are coming together to shape what farmers could plant this coming season. Chad, I've heard a lot of analysts expecting to see a 95-plus million acre corn crop going in the ground this next year. Does that align with what you're hearing from farmers on the ground?
I would say the direction aligns. 95 would be a really strong move. Okay. But, I'd say some of the anecdotal data that I've been hearing from farmers, I've been traveling around the country, does show me, more corn planting is coming. We saw that action in the fall as they were applying fertilizer. We're seeing that as I move through the winter meetings, as I talk to seed salesmen. Seed corn is moving right now. And so we know corn's definitely going higher. Myself, I'm in the 94 million acre camp, but the idea is that we know corn, given the pricing and given that our ability to work the fields this fall was pretty good, that both aligns to higher corn plantings in 2025.
All right, we'll see if this spring weather can cooperate to get that corn in the ground. But if we've got 94, 95 million acres of corn in the ground, do we have enough domestic demand and or international demand to keep prices here in this $4.50 to $5 range, Chad, for December?
Well, and that takes us back to what we're seeing with the tariffs. The idea is we need definitely strong export markets in order to chew through all that corn if we were to put that much in the ground. If you think about it, right now, USDA's sort of unofficial projection for 2025 is 92 million acres. At trendline yields, that works out to 15.3 billion bushels. Right now, demand's at 15.1. So we would need growing demand, and arguably it would have to be the exports that would grow the most in order to match.
All right. Lots to watch on this corn side. There's a lot to watch on the soybean side as well, in addition to the cattle market. And we'll talk through those factors when we return with Dr. Chad Hart from Iowa State University. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone. And we're back talking markets with Dr. Chad Hart, professor of ag economics at Iowa State University. And Chad, we were talking about domestic demand for corn looking forward and how that market could stay well supported. As I think back to December, I heard from the soybean crush was at its highest level ever, the most bushels ever crushed in a month for soybean meal and oil. Are we building enough domestic demand to afford to lose that Chinese market for soybeans?
Well, we're definitely trying to. And as you mentioned, the idea is we've been watching actually crush demand build up over the past couple of years. A lot of this growth is related to biofuel production, especially within renewable diesel, and targeting arguably the California market. As you look at the low carbon fuel standard out there, renewable diesel has been a big part of that, and that's been helping drive some of that crush demand that we've been building up, and as you say, is at record levels right now. The challenge is, though, that in trying to see if that could replace the Chinese export market, you got to remember that the Chinese export market is a massive market for U.S. soybeans. And so the growth has been great, but it hasn't been great enough to necessarily fully offset the impact of China.
All right. So with that being said, we know that growers across the northern Corn Belt are pretty well locked into that corn-soybean rotation for a lot of folks. For folks looking at a heavy soybean year, Chad, how aggressive are you advising them to be on their marketing?
Well, that's the deal. As we're looking at soybeans right now, I'm not being too aggressive right now. I mean, we have seen prices soften, like say, relative to corn. They're definitely weaker as we look out there. But we also know that if we do see those massive corn plantings this spring, that means we're likely going to see a drop in soybean production. And so that should mean for improving prices as we move through the year in 2025. So I'm probably delaying that movement, at least early on here with pre-harvest marketing with soybeans, to try to let that seasonal bump that we tend to see late spring, early summer, let that develop and then take advantage of it.
That makes sense. Watch for maybe some tight acreage headlines and a weather scare, and then grab onto those opportunities. Speaking of opportunities, Dr. Hart, the cattle market continues to dance up in record territory. Are we close to a top in this market, or are we just building a good solid base to move even higher?
I think we're still building to maybe build a little higher, because when you look at the data that USDA just published, the idea is we're still not building up this herd, and it's likely we won't be able to for at least a little while longer. Because when we're looking at the cattle market, it really depends upon the drought conditions we're seeing throughout the Midwest and West. Those drought conditions are still out there, and it's hard to grow the cattle herd if you don't have the grass to put the herd on.
That's very true. As you talk to producers either in Iowa or elsewhere across the country, do you get the sense that there is a hunger to expand the herd, but just a lack of availability?
I get the sense that there is a hunger to grow the herd, but it's not only a lack of availability of grass, but it's also the case of just if you had to purchase those heifers right now, what it would cost as well. And so there's both a financial incentive and let's call it a physical process incentive here to maybe not start growing quite yet.
Now, looking out at where prices are today, we've got elevated levels well out into the future. Given the volatility in the cattle market historically, is this a time to get some price hedging on the books for those cattle producers?
I'm definitely looking at price hedging right now. As you mentioned, we're at record levels right now, and we do know that when the cattle cycle turns, and it will turn eventually, that prices move down even more quickly than they've come up. And so we want to have that price protection in place as we're moving here at these rarefied levels, because we've got a lot of capital invested in the herd as it stands today. You don't want that investment to lose value over time.
That is a great point. Dr. Hart, thank you so much for joining us today. Any advice for growers as we enter this volatile period here in marketing?
Well, that's the deal. As we talked just right there with the cattle market, price management is still a very key feature to be doing right now, given whether at the record prices we're seeing in cattle or sort of the weakened prices we're seeing on the crop side. You still want to protect that bottom side right now, because working capital, especially for a lot of farmers, is a challenge right now that we need to protect to farm for the future.
That's what it's all about. Stay in business this year and the next year. Dr. Chad Hart, Iowa State University, thanks so much for joining us this week.
Thank you.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Well, Greg Solier has been watching what's to come in the week ahead. And Greg, what are you anticipating for the Pacific Northwest?
Well, an active weather pattern, a colder one. And I tell you, that mother lode of Arctic air that over the past week up around Alberta, Edmonton area, Western Canada, sent readings down to 40 below zero. Actual air temperatures, and some of those daytime readings, it stayed sub-zero. And yeah, we proved the theory that it can snow below zero. We saw that from Montana east across parts of North Dakota last week. But here is the Arctic air. Here's a weather system off across the northern Pacific. And watch how first the snows make their way across some of the bare ground areas of Nebraska. Very cold readings expected. Keep an eye on winter wheat down here. Of course, that's kind of the epicenter in South Dakota, the ongoing worst of drought into the Plain States areas. But you'll see this Arctic air kind of back build. There'll be snow at SeaTac down to Portland, the Willamette Valley, Rogue River Basin, to name a few. Note the much colder air all the way down into the northern valleys of California, and some fairly low snow levels as well into the northern Sierra, and a wide and expansive area of snowfall expected. Several waves over the middle to late portions of the week from Yellowstone into the northern plains and building south and east as the week wears on. So welcome back to winter time at its finest here in this new month of February. Here's the southern extension of that weather system bringing significant rain. We had some last week as well into parts of central California California. Fairly mild for now in the desert Southwest. Note the low here and the wedge of much colder Arctic air beginning to spread on southward. It'll be the race. Does it snow first and we get protection for winter wheat fields, or does the cold come on in? In any event, the weather system into California drops farther south. Showers and thunderstorms, desert Southwest, as that cold air wraps into the Pacific Northwest. Freeze potential, pretty good one, all the way into the central and southern Sacramento Valley. And this weather system pulls into the southern plains, Mike, with wide and expansive snowfall for a change. Haven't seen much of this the wintertime season from Nebraska southward all the way to the Red River Valley of the South.
Well, it looks like snow hasn't yet come to the northern Corn Belt. Does that change next week?
It's coming. Hopefully you weren't lulled into complacency coming off some of that 60-degree air last week that made it up to Champaign, 70 at Kansas City and St. Louis. Boy, a real shocker to the system as temperatures will have plunged probably some 50-plus degrees and a range of temperatures from areas that'll stay down below zero at maybe 10 below for highs up near the U.S. border, that down along the Gulf Coast will hit better than 80 degrees. So that strengthens the jet stream. And look at the range of weather across the Corn Belt and the plains, from bitter cold, some light snowfall through the Great Lakes region, and developing low pressure coming off the front range of the Rockies. That spells problems and troubles. First, from a freezing rain sleet standpoint, Ohio Valley farther north accumulating snow, and we will put down some snow into Nebraska, parts of the Dakotas, Iowa as well. Some of those areas that have had a snow drought this wintertime season, we will make it up here for the month of February and going forward. The last of the warm air along the Rio Grande. This weather system coming out of the southwest and across the Gulf Coast area. It's colder air and much colder air up towards the Ozarks. We'll get a weather system ramped up, and it's showers and thunderstorms, heavy and severe, Texas on eastward. And look at the snow and ice, Mike, across Kansas down to Oklahoma and Texas. A wide range of weather on the southern plains, but it's moisture for the southern plains this week.
Eastern Corn Belt, Eastern Seaboard going to be receiving the same kind of energy?
Just about. That drop in temperatures will be pretty prolific coming off last week's spring-like warmth. Colder air, more seasonal temperatures all the way down to the Ohio Clipper system into the northeast of New England, and the bitter cold poised up through the Arrowhead of Minnesota and forecast to build southward in the wake of this snow system making its way across the central and southern Corn Belt areas, in a freezing rain situation for the Ohio into the mid-Atlantic region. Over the southeastern states, the cold air wedges on southward to the Tennessee Valley. We'll watch for this weather system coming out of Texas, and with it widespread showers and thunderstorms for the Gulf Coast and a freezing rain potential situation for the Tennessee Valley back into parts of the southern plains.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. With concerns rising in the ag industry about the outlook for international trade, farmers are continuing to focus on what they can do to build demand domestically and also add value to the crops and products we grow here in America. One place that's working to help farmers maximize their value is the Northern Crops Institute up in Fargo, North Dakota. Joining me today is David Bain. He serves as the director for NCI. And David, thank you so much for talking with us this week.
Absolutely, Mike. Great to be with you.
When we think about the Northern Crops Institute, David, what are we talking about? Who backs NCI?
Yeah, thanks for asking. What we do at the Northern Crops Institute, we're actually a 4-state agency, so we're a little bit unique. We're an agency of the state of North Dakota, but our mission really is to promote utilization of all the commodities that are grown in the 4 states. So our mission extends to North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, and Montana. And so what we do is we work with international commodity groups, state and local commodity groups, and then also value-added processing to find new markets for our commodities that our farmers grow in this region, or if we can at all help them grow the international markets as well. So anything we can do to find new homes and new value for the farm crops that we grow in this 4-state region.
Now, when you talk about that 4-state region and the commodity crops you grow, David, there is a lot to choose from. How many different crops are grown in your region?
Gosh, I should count, right? We think about, about 15 to 20 major crops, but really there's also a lot of minor crops. And you're right, the diversity that we have within southern Minnesota all the way to western Montana is really pretty extreme. We have all the different cereal grains, oats, barley, wheat, durum, and then, other, specialty minors, oilseed crops. We've got corn, soybeans, we've got canola, sunflowers, sugar beets, potatoes. And then you get into pulse crops, lentils and green pea, yellow pea, chickpea, dry edible beans like kidneys, navies, pintos. There's just a variety of crops that we grow in this market. It makes it pretty exciting.
It is. And I hear those crops. I think there's a lot of nutrition. There's a lot of direct-to-food crops in that part of the country. David, so when NCI is looking to drive demand, can you talk us through that process? What happens when somebody comes in to see you with an idea?
Yeah, so there's on the food product development side, what we do is we work with a lot of startup companies, ingredient companies, or folks that are trying to add value either from the farm. So we'll have a lot of farmers that'll come in with these great ideas about how they can add value to their own farm, take a commodity that they're growing, and then turn it into a finished food product or an ingredient. So we'll work with them on kind of what are the trends, what are the marketplaces, how to develop things like snack foods or bakery, cereal products, a lot of pasta, and then if they're doing something in the oilseed space as well. And then we'll work with the ingredient companies or even some of the world's largest food manufacturers if they've got processing challenges or if they want to come up with new ideas or new formulas that they work with us on. So it's really all of the above, Mike. Everything from a farmer, from a startup company, from a food company, a manufacturer, even the world's largest ones. How do we come up with new ideas? How do we solve problems? I think we all understand the trends in the food industry change all the time. And so the last couple of years, it's been about protein. We also see a lot of things, lately about the allergens, so gluten-free and dairy-free and soy-free, and coming up with different ideas for that. So whatever we can do to help those food companies find, increased value from their markets, from their food products.
Absolutely. We can add those values, add those dollars back to the American ag economy, which is always well respected by farmers. Now, David, as I think about creating a new food, obviously there's the research that goes into it, there's having the raw product, but I also would need special tools to make a puffed type chip or anything like that. Now, how can farmers get access to those kind of tools and manufacturing processes?
Yeah, so our labs are really set up. We've got a food grade facility where we've got a number of different food product development labs, and everything that we do, Mike, is at scale. So we're not a small research facility working on, small samples for publication. The information belongs directly to the companies that we work for. So our information that we gain when we're working here, whether it's a pasta, whether it's a puffed product like a breakfast cereal or a puff snack, even a texturized vegetable protein, the oilseed work that we do, it's all meant to scale up directly to the commercial facilities. And so when food companies or farmers come to work with us, the information that they walk out with will help them go directly to their commercial manufacturer or, co-manufacturer if they want to scale it up. So we kind of pride ourselves in being that link really between research and actual, the product development that goes right to scale.
That is incredible. Can you give us an indication, how long has NCI been around and how many different products have you had a chance to assist with? Could you even keep track of all that data?
Yeah, to hazard a guess. So yeah, we've been around for 44 years. So we're a state agency of North Dakota that started in the late 70s when farm commodities were under pressure, and folks realized, our legislature realized, that we've got to find a way to stabilize or add value. So for over 4 decades, we've been working with food companies and the international marketplace. So yeah, I would have no clue on how many companies we've started. But what I will say, this is exciting, is again, when you look at the trends, whether that's years ago, we had the Atkins diet, we had high fiber, we've had now things like protein and all these trends. We can walk up and down a pasta aisle, a bakery aisle, and even some of the snack foods now and see companies that we've worked with. So it's really rewarding actually being able to talk about the food product development that we do, the commodity promotions that we do, and actually see our products on the shelves. And today it's really so different because there's so much sold on Amazon. So, the marketplace is really a lot closer to the farmer than it had maybe ever been.
That's true. We're continuing to see it's not just the production side of the food business change, the retail side continues to change as well. David, if we've got viewers who are intrigued by NCI, they want to learn more about what you guys are doing up there in Fargo, where would you send them for information?
Yeah, so feel free to check out our website. You can find all of our contact information there. It's called, northern-crops.com is the NCI website. So if you look for northern-crops.com, you'll find us there. And whether that's some of our educational programming or webinars or programs that we do, and then anything we do in the labs, we'd be happy to help.
Fantastic. David Boehm, Director of the Northern Crops Institute, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Mike.
And folks, leave it here. We'll have more This Week in Agribusiness coming up next.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. The recently wrapped up Clean Fuels Conference brought together some of the brightest minds in the world of biofuels, renewable diesel, and sustainable aviation fuel. Director of Communications for Clean Fuels Alliance America, Heather Buchter, joins us now for a review. Heather, I understand it was a big crowd in San Diego this year. It's always such a great place to network, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We had about 750 leaders along the biodiesel, renewable diesel, and sustainable aviation fuel value chain join us in San Diego for the Clean Fuels Conference. It's always a really great way to kick off the year. And we really do see a broad mix of people every year, too. We're talking everything from farmers to fuel producers to original equipment manufacturers and even end users too. So just a place to get business done at the start of the year. A lot of networking opportunities taking place at our conference, but also a chance to hear from the experts about the state of the industry and looking at the near-term goals, the long-term goals, and had a lot of sessions, with timely sessions, I should say, to do that this year as well with featured speakers.
Well, that was it. You guys had a star-packed itinerary, a lot of experts on hand. Can you run through some of the speakers for us?
Yeah, we were really happy to welcome Lucas Lynch, the CEO of the United Soybean Board. He was a speaker on our panel regarding feedstocks, and soybeans do make up about half the feedstock going into clean fuels production. So just a very important piece of the puzzle. And I thought he did an excellent job just conveying how the soybean industry plays a major role in how the clean fuels industry is growing and how it will continue to grow, and how farmers have a seat at the table as well in that conversation. And we also heard from Union Pacific Railroad. They're switching to higher blends of biodiesel. And on stage, we have the CEO of UP, Beth Whited, and also their sustainability director, was on a panel too. So great to see their involvement. They did receive a Clean Fuels Industry Partnership Award as the first Class 1 railroad to join Clean Fuels Alliance America's membership. And I can proudly say that now all 6 Class 1 railroads are in our membership as well. So it really, I think, demonstrates just how serious railroads are now about decarbonizing and just partnering with those in the industry to get that done. We did hear from the California Air Resources Board Executive Officer, Stephen Cliff. He spoke about the low carbon fuel standard and did recognize how biofuels play an important role in that. So good conversations with our featured speakers, and we're glad that they could present on stage.
That's what it's all about. Now, of course, Clean Fuels Alliance America isn't done. You'll be on the road again. Heather, where will the industry have the chance to see your team next?
Well, we're looking forward to seeing everyone at Commodity Classic in Denver. So we'll have a booth there. I'll be participating in a panel discussion about the role that biofuels play in driving decarbonization. So we'd love to have people come over, say hi, ask us about how things are going, and we'd be happy to have that conversation.
Absolutely. Folks, get out there, find Heather, talk to them at Commodity Classic. Heather, I know we look forward to talking with you at Commodity Classic, so we'll see you in March in Denver.
Thanks. We appreciate it. Look forward to it.
Greg Sodier is back now with his extended farm weather forecast for the nation.
Earlier in the program, Greg mentioned that winter's making a reappearance to many folks across the country. And Greg, who's going to see the snow?
If you've lost track of that white stuff, we had some of it, by the way, through the Dakotas, Montana, added to the snowpack and snow cover, and it's been pretty much back and forth there. Well, you folks in through Nebraska, Iowa, much of the Midwest, Corn Belt, back southwest with time will get in to accumulating snow, preceded by this situation. These shallow cold air intrusions initially mean the rain that comes on down freezes with those temperatures below freezing, and that's the problem for Oklahoma to the Ohio Valley. Rain to the south and southeast, severe across the Gulf Coast. Again, accumulating snows for much of the northern and central Corn Belt and points on westward. Yeah, it can snow below zero. Saw that across the Dakotas and Montana last week in Canadian Prairie. Note the thunderstorms in the southwest and Mike snow to the Pacific Northwest coast as the week wears on.
Well, Greg, what does that show you for temperatures we get into the week of February 17th?
Widespread cold and cold wave weather conditions anchored still across the Canadian Prairie, below average Pacific Northwest, down to Kansas, Ohio Valley on northward. Some late season or early season warmth, however you want to label it, over the Gulf Coast area. So this means no shortage of moisture over the southeastern part of the country. Probably another ice problem. Ohio Valley or southern Corn Belt, widespread snows for the northeast of New England. Much of the Corn Belt back into the Pacific Northwest, still high and dry in what's been an abysmal precip season in the southwest.
Any chance for a warm up as we get to the week of February 24th?
The temperatures trying to moderate. We welcome in meteorological springtime, March 1st. Anything but. Here's this cold wave pattern anchored at the Siouan northward. Maybe a late season frost to the southeastern part of the country. Some warmth over the southwestern reaches, but a pretty chilly weather pattern. That trough is over the middle part of the country, so no shortage of moisture. Late season moisture for the Pacific Northwest into the northern and central Rockies. That'll be snowfall. Welcome moisture in one form or another across the Great Plains and Winter Wheat Belt, and rain over the southeastern states, and organized snows for much of the Corn Belt into the Northeast and New England.
What does your crystal ball show for that first full week of March, Greg?
From a temperature standpoint, again, we're still cold here, much below average. Cold wave into areas of southeastern Canadian prairies. Some warmth over the Gulf Coast and the southwestern reaches of the country, with that jet stream still poised over the middle part of the country. Systems come into the Pacific Northwest. That'll be welcome snowfall. It'll be late season for and probably getting into calving operations. Northern Plains moisture for the Corn Belt into the Northeast and New England, with showers and thunderstorms down towards Dixie, high and dry over the southwest.
Our Farm Progress Update is sponsored by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of high-quality, high-capacity field grain belts and augers. Visit brandt.ca for more. Let's dig into what editors here at Farm Progress are talking about and learning about. And right now, they're down at CattleCon in San Antonio, Texas. Joining us this week is Clint Peck. He's the contributing editor for Beef Magazine. And Clint, thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Oh, glad to be here, Mike. Thank you.
Well, you're down in San Antonio. What's the attitude from cattle producers from around the country like at the CattleCon event this year?
Well, of course, the attitude is great with the prices we're seeing for cattle across the board. All these producers, whether they're cow-calf or feeder operators, backgrounders, they're pretty happy with the way things are presently. The feedlot guys are the same way. Seems like everybody up and down the line is doing well. Of course, there are some of the things about prices and interest rates that hang a little bit in people's minds. But calf people are very happy with calf prices and the outlook for calf prices going through the winter and on into the spring and fall.
There is a tremendous amount of demand out there from the American consumer for high-quality U.S. beef. That's great to see it reflected in these price levels. Now, Clint, about you, you were with Beef Magazine, then you left. Now you're back. As you look forward for Beef Magazine over this next year, what are you excited about talking about and learning about in the industry?
Well, I'm just excited to be back in the industry after kind of being absent for about 10 or 12 years. Beef cattle and cattle ranching, that is my passion in my life. And I'm glad to be back here, glad to have the opportunity to come back to work for beef. Going forward, it's making kind of those old acquaintances become new again. And then working with producers to provide, I guess, the best information we can on their production and their markets and marketing and government programs, all those kinds of things that we want to share with people as they come along across our boards.
And you listed a number of things right there, Clint. Interest rates, working capital, government programs, all of these things are changing in the industry this year, isn't it?
Yeah, they're changing. And of course, we kind of think, well, will we ever go back to 3 or 4% interest rates? And I think that the reality is that at least not in any kind of the foreseeable future. So we're going to probably have to live with those interest rates where they are, somewhere in the neighborhood of where they are right now. And I think most of these producers are thinking they can live with those interest rates.
Yeah, it definitely can slow folks down when you're looking at the cost of money costing what it does. Clint, going forward, for folks who want to continue to find your writing, find your analysis on the cattle market, where would you advise them to go?
Yeah, beefmagazine.com. Just go on your internet, go to your search engines. You can look at beefmagazine.com and for my stuff, then go to the search function on that website and click my name, Clint Peck, and you'll see my things coming up. I've been contributing now for about 3 months.
Perfect. We'll be watching for more updates from Clint Peck, contributing editor at Beef Magazine. Thanks for joining us this week.
All right. Glad to be here.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. So is it possible somehow to save a little bit of money when you're doing a tractor restoration? Is there somewhere you can, well, cut corners a little bit? Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Lundell Plastics. Our friend Vance Lundell is going to be at the National Farm Machinery Show in Louisville the week ahead. Take time to stop by and visit with Vance there. Find out about his wide range of products, those poly products that can help protect your equipment, improve your efficiency at planting time, help you get ready to roll when planting time comes around. The website is lundellplastics.com. Well, LP tractors have their own following, to be sure. That tank sitting up there, it's impressive. It's beautiful, that big bump up there. And, well, when it's painted up, it is hard to miss. But what if you don't paint it? What if you try to save a little bit of money? What if, well, I mean, you get into some real expense when you think about the cost of tires, maybe an overhaul for that tractor, all of the parts that you're going to need. And then if maybe you don't paint it, is it the end of the world? Well, that's being considered by Tyler Montgomery at Almena, Kansas, who now owns this beautiful tractor. It's a big 806 LP Standard. It's impressive in every way. He thinks it sat outside for maybe 40 years. Now, only about 84 of these made, according to Tyler. This is one of them. Big sweeping fenders. My goodness, look at those. They're nice, straight. They don't need much work on them. They might not need paint. Well, he's probably going to clear coat it. That's what Tyler indicated to me anyway. It's a great 806 LP Standard at Almena, Kansas, owned by Tyler Montgomery. Mark Stock checks in here every weekend. We're always pleased to have him with us as he gives you the Big Iron Report.
Well, hello, Max. Looking forward to seeing you in Louisville, Kentucky at the National Farm Machinery Show. We will have a big screen monitor highlighting the sellers on our February 12th Big Iron Auction. S2 Roll-Offs LLC from Fremont, Nebraska will sell 3 Mack Granite tri-axle day cab semi-truck tractors, 2 2024 Titan 53-foot tandem axle aluminum walking floor trailers, and 2 Smithco tri-axle side dump trailers. Also, the Raymond L. Faber Estate sale with equipment located by East Peoria, Illinois features a John Deere 9410 Maximizer combine, a 1981 John Deere 4440 tractor. This is a 5,900 hour quad range, plus a John Deere 7410 mechanical front tractor with a loader, a John Deere 8100 mechanical front, and a John Deere 4030. Monkey Farm and Cattle Company Retirement from Nickerson, Nebraska will sell a Case IH Puma 185 mechanical front tractor and a Strobel 2-box low-profile seed tender trailer. And Todd Van Heusen from Polk, Nebraska has some forestry and lumber equipment. Once again, looking forward to seeing everyone in Louisville, Kentucky at the National Farm Machinery Show.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. We love getting to know that next generation of agricultural leader, and this week we're talking with Brooke Booth. She serves as the Southwest Iowa State FFA Vice President. And Brooke, thanks for talking with us this week.
Yep, thank you.
Now, I understand you're talking to us from a work trip. Is that right? What are you up to?
Yep, I'm currently at a chapter visit at South Central Calhoun High School in Lake City, Iowa.
All right, getting to know the local FFAers. I imagine that is a big part of your responsibilities as a state vice president.
Yep, so we try to go to chapter visits every day of the week, about 5 times a week from Monday to Friday. Yep.
Wow. And now, before you got into leadership, I understand you've got a background in agriculture. Can you tell us a little bit about how you were raised?
Yep, so I am originally from Manning, Iowa, which is on a 4-acre farm. I help raise show lambs with Booth Show Lambs. I help own and operate. We have over 75 head of ewes, so I show lambs all over the nation. I've gone to Arizona Nationals, Louisville, the Kansas City Royal. I go to state fair shows also, and I also help other members start their journey by showing sheep as well.
That's fantastic. And Brooke, what was it that made you want to be a part of the FFA?
I originally wanted to be part of the FFA. So my dad is an ag teacher at my high school at IKM Manning. So I was in the ag costume at a very young age, and I was just very inspired to see that high schoolers could just speak in front of people so easily when I was just this shy little girl. And I really inspired and wanted to be just like them. So that's what I really wanted to be in the ag classroom.
Fantastic. And I think we can all say you are a very qualified speaker. We've appreciated this conversation, Brooke, and good luck going forward.
Thank you.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by AGI, supporting your expertise with industry-leading grain handling, storage, conditioning, and monitoring solutions. AGI, we're right there with you. Chad Colby's back with another look at the airline scale.
I promised you on a previous tech segment that I would come back and show you Blue Ink Technologies AirScale in use. And this past week, I caught up with Matt Foes as he had already installed them on the truck. And if you haven't seen it, it's simply a little inline sensor that goes after the leveling valve that will read the entire weight of that axle group. So on Matt's truck, he's got it on the drive axle of his Peterbilt and on the trailer axle in the back. And as you can see here in real time, he recorded his cell phone. You can see the pounds start to move up as he loads his truck. The challenge loading a truck, if you don't know this, and I think for everybody pretty much all the time, is it's a delicate balance, right? You, first of all, need to stay at the proper overall weight, but most importantly, you also can't overload the axles. And that was kind of the biggest thing that Matt liked about this, because it's too easy, especially with high-speed unloading systems, to get an extra 2 or 3 or 4,000 pounds and not really realize it. And I think that's the nice part about this technology is it's showing you what you're putting on the axle. So if you need to move the truck one way or the other, it's right there in real time. And most importantly, when you go to leave the farm, you know that you're hauling at a legal rate. We had a conversation about the automated roll-top tarps and said, I remember when they came out, no one's going to buy them. They're too expensive. And now everybody has that convenience. And I wonder if this is another piece of that convenience, because when we went to a local scale, we quickly realized that Matt's load was within 300 pounds from what his cell phone said, which is really, really awesome. It's pretty low cost as well. Moving forward, looking at technology, next week's another big week. The team at This Week in Agribusiness, including myself, will be at the National Farm Machinery Show in Louisville, Kentucky. We hope to see you there, and I look forward to seeing what new technology that's going to be debuted next week, because there's always some new stuff at Louisville. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thanks, Chad. That's right, folks. If you'll be down in Louisville for the National Farm Machinery Show, come and see us. We'll be taping This Week in Agribusiness on Wednesday at the Case booth from 9 to 11. Stop by. We'd love to have you say hello. Max Armstrong always says that time period between harvest and planting really is the education season in American agriculture, and that's certainly true when we look at what's ahead this year. Coming up very shortly is Commodity Classic in Denver, Colorado, and joining us now to discuss it is one of the co-chairs, Deb Gangwish of Nebraska. And Deb, I understand Commodity Classic has been a family event for you and your family for some time.
It certainly has. I started to look back, and my first Commodity Classic was in Phoenix in 2015. My husband got to go to Nashville. I had to stay home with the kids that year. But ever since 2015, our entire family has gone. And it's been a real joy because now we have grandkids that are starting that have never not been to Commodity Classic. So it is a family event.
I think a lot of people, when they think about Commodity Classic, they think farmers, they think education, they think trade show. What do you like about it for your family? How is it worth the whole family coming out?
I think for our family, that atmosphere is just magical. It's full of energy. It's the one opportunity we have every winter to invest in ourselves and have a little fun while we're doing it. Right now, we've got tons of equipment in the shop, and the guys are, working on the planters. We're getting things ready. We often forget that we need to invest in ourselves. We only have so many chances to grow that crop. And Commodity Classic gives our family and so many others that opportunity to have some family time, but yet attend learning sessions, look at the latest and the greatest. We've got 50 new exhibitors, over 400 exhibitors this year. And it gives us that just a wonderful chance to invest in ourselves, which the ROI on that is pretty high.
It is, and we need it, especially in this time period. Of course, Commodity Classic is the largest event put together by farmers for farmers. And Deb, of course, you and your family are farm families. As you look out over this next year, what are you excited or worried about that you're looking to learn more about at Commodity Classic?
This morning, I was just on a webinar with Krista Swanson talking about tariffs. So we've got a lot of volatility that's coming into play this year, as well as prices just aren't at our break even yet. So anything we can do to drive efficiencies or elevate that excellence in agriculture, our theme, that's what I'm going to be looking for. So coming home with, possibly new information on fertilizers, on crop, protection, on equipment, anything that we can do to drive efficiencies. Precision agriculture is huge. Yes. Technology. So all of that is there.
It is indeed.
Along with fun.
We need to get signed up soon. Deb, can you tell us where to go to get registered and what our deadlines are for important dates?
So we can still sign up. You've got plenty of time. We're 26 days away. Go to commodityclassic.com. There is a deadline. If you want to do some fun tours, we've got some great things set up. A behind-the-scenes tour at the stadium, a trip to Colorado Springs, a trip to Fort Collins. But February 15th is that date.
All
so
right.
Please go to commodityclassic.com.
Commodityclassic.com. Get signed up. Deb Gangwish, one of the co-chairs, thanks for joining us this weekend.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you for joining us here today. Be sure to catch us next time right here for This Week in Agribusiness.
This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.